Alrighty. So I tried to go live in the last stream and I was not able to do that. So I don't know what happened, but it's Francis Whittleson. Welcome to Very Unhappy Hour. And I'm just going to try to share this so that people know that this is the new link. And we'll see what happens. Because the first link didn't work. So I'm going to share this again with Twitter. Okay, so hello everyone. Hopefully everyone will find their way to the things don't seem to be working very well. Anyway, cheers everyone. Very unhappy hour. And this is a new link, or maybe it was the same one. I don't know how this works. But anyway, some will be happy to know, and some will be unhappy to know that this is non-alcoholic beer, because I don't want to drink in these circumstances, which is things seem to be very odd. That's all I can say. I've got a couple of things happening which are very unusual, and I'm just trying to recalibrate myself and figure things out, do what I perceive to be right, which is not the easy. It's not the easiest thing to be doing. But what I wanted to talk about in this live stream, this question and answer. So I'm here largely to answer any questions that people might have about what's going on. And the latest thing that I've started to do, which I think is a pretty good idea, is do a countdown until the 4th anniversary of the Kamloops 215 deception anniversary. So that's going to be happening on May 27th. So every day up to May 27th is going to get a new issue that's happening, and I can do a post on it. I can do a video on it. It takes a lot of work, so I'm not sure. I'm just trying to test this out here, but it's quite interesting, and I'm trying to do it vaguely in chronological order. So I just started doing the chronology. So I started off with the Senate because there was a controversy because a senator from Alberta seemed to be the first senator who'd ever raised critical questions about the 215 and the unmarked graves. And he wasn't exactly, articulate about the deception, but he did say that there was no evidence. He did accept that there was such a thing as denialism. So this was a kind of a development in the Senate. And I wanted to sort of do more of a video on the Senate. And I was hoping to do it today, actually, but because everything is so challenging right now, I just don't have the bandwidth to be able to do it. So it's better just to do the question and answer period, have that at least happen on Mondays and Wednesday. And if I can get the video done, that's good too. But it might be too much of an ask to be able to do both of them. But definitely the question and answer period is easy to do. So the first one was the Senate. The second one was the House of Commons, which has all sorts of problems with the House of Commons. People often talk about Justin Trudeau and the kind of crazy stuff that he did in the House of Commons, and Jagmeet Singh, who, it was embarrassing, and Leah Gazan, and all these types who just seem to be completely untethered from reality in their discussions of these matters, especially Leah Gazan, because Leah Gazan keeps on going, even though she was in January 2025, she was saying the remains of 215 children have been found. But the surprising thing about the House of Commons, which I wanted to talk about more about, was the Conservatives, what the Conservatives are doing, which is just terrible too. Aaron O'Toole had this kind of grotesque thing about talking to his son about, why are children buried at school and all this stuff. And Pierre, now he's no longer the leader, but Pierre Poilievre put forth an embarrassing post about the unmarked, a mass grave. I believe Poilievre referred to it as a mass grave. I have the post somewhere. So that means that we have no accountability in the House of Commons, because questions should be asked by the Conservatives because they're the official opposition. And, why do we not have Aaron Gunn, Andrew Lawton, he's another Conservative, Jamil Javani, they're all kind of critical of all this kind of woke stuff and the restrictions on freedom of speech and so on. Why aren't they asking questions about what happened to the $12.1 million? And until we have until we have some kind of accountability, nothing's going to get done. And that brings me to this kind of really bizarre interaction that I've been having with a guy who's almost harassing me. I don't like to use that word lightly, but he's a businessman, and he keeps on bugging me about taking the Kamloops band to court to do the excavations. And he thinks you get he wants money to be spent. I believe he said $2 million on doing the excavation. So then you can have the fact that you have no evidence, you can take that to court. Well, I'm saying the band's not going to let you do excavations. This is going to be the federal government is it relates to the bands, and the bands decide what they want to do. And the federal government never, has any control over that. Although they could, if they wanted to exercise their, what is it? I can't remember what the nature of it. It's a trust relationship. Sui generis. My brain is fried. Anyway, it's a trust relationship. And so this seemed to be completely bizarre, this kind of discussion, which I'm being constantly bombarded with criticisms about how I'm not paying a lawyer or talking to a lawyer about trying to hold the Kamloops Indian band to account. There is something called an information that you can lay, and I did look into that, but it would mean that the actual charge would be fraud, and the fraud is against the government, not against me. So if there is fraud, and I looked this up, I don't think it's fraud, because in order for there to be fraud, there would have never had been any intention to excavate, and there seemed to be initially an intention to excavate. Maybe they were never intending to, but that's going to be a really high bar to try to show. So I have no idea what the information charge would be. It's misappropriation of government funds, but that's something the government, the opposition has to be involved in. And anyway, so I'm very confused by that interaction, and I'm still kind of a little bit taken aback by the hostility and the haranguing that I'm being constantly subjected to. So that's the House of Commons. 74 was, and we're going to get to this, I know everyone's chomping at the bit, for the city of Calgary. City of Calgary. This is crazy. The city of Calgary has this memorial, which Michelle Sterling and I did this interview in front of the memorial. Simon Hergott shot the video. It was incredible. The interview that we have, it just hasn't been edited. I put a few clips on social media. Anyway, you can see it from all Simon's footage, all the shoes and the teddy bears, and oh my god. Anyway, that's been there because we were doing this interview in September 2025, and they're now on Friday. So Friday, March 20th, they're going to, I think, gather up all the shoes and the teddy bears along with 215 tobacco ties, which are these tobacco in a piece of cloth, and you put a tie around it and you tie it to trees, and they're prayers for the spirits of the 215. That's what it's about. And they're going to walk all these shoes over to what used to be called Fort Calgary, and they've changed the name to the Confluence, which of course Michelle has a lot to say about in the interview. And I think, well, Michelle was saying they're planning on bronzing these plastic shoes. Like, that can't be. Like, I haven't looked into this very much. Anyway, so my thoughts about this, because like just writing a letter to the city or whatever, this isn't going to do anything. And the only thing I've had any success with is to get on the sandwich board and go down there and start asking people questions. Anyway, there's this person who's kind of harassing me is going, "This is incitement. What are you doing? This is terrible. What you're planning on doing, that should not be." I'm going, incitement? I'm just asking what remains. How is that incitement? I'm asking a question to these people who are doing all this nonsense, and they're going to take these ties, these tobacco ties, and the shoes, and they're going to have this march. And so I'm just going to be there. Now, of course, they're going to be some people are going to be slightly irate about me doing that, but why bother? Like, why? I don't know. Like, am I going to get, what are they going to do to me? I don't understand. I think it's highly improbable that I'm going to get, assaulted. This is like downtown Calgary and whatever. So, like, I don't understand what the problem is there. People are saying, oh yeah, there's a high probability. Well, if there is, we got a serious problem on our hands, that you can't go and ask questions what remains out of this stupid march that is complete made up kind of stuff. And then the media coverage, which was just horrific, which was saying, to begin with, the Calgary Herald, the remains of 215 children at the beginning, and then halfway down the article, it had something about anomalies. So even in the story in the Calgary Herald, they don't seem to know the difference between GPR finding anomalies and the remains of 215 children. That's how bad things are with this situation. So the only way I've managed to get any kind of public awareness of this ridiculous stuff is to put on the sandwich board and just kind of walk around and ask people questions. So I don't see why it shouldn't be done in front of City Hall. How is that incitement? This is absurd. And if people are going to get upset, well, they're entitled to get upset. And so I'll come back to this because that's going to be the major thing. But the next one was the accusations of genocide. So this is where I'm starting to get into this is 73 days before the accusations of Canadian genocide, because it's my argument that these accusations of genocide created the fertile soil for the 215 claim. And it's my understanding that in around 2019, after the Murdered and Missing Indigenous Women and Girls Inquiry, which declared this genocide, there was pushback against it because it wasn't cultural genocide, it was actual genocide, and everyone had kind of agreed that cultural genocide is not really genocide, and now we're full-on genocide. So after that report came out, there was pushback, and people were saying in a meeting, I've heard, it was a consultant was at one of these meetings. She was talking to me about this situation. She said everyone was wondering how to make people care about Aboriginal policy. Funding was starting to dry up, and we're trying to, sort of ask people to, trying to figure out how to make them care more. Well, the 215 kind of nonsense. This made people care. This kind of false allegation of 215 children buried in what appeared to be a mass grave, because you're not going to have 215 separate burials. That's going to be very bizarre. No one's going to notice in the middle of the night all these lanterns and people with shovels and stuff. So anyway, the whole thing is kind of odd. So I talked about that genocide accusation, and then the latest one, which is the first attempts to go find the quote unquote children at Kamloops. Like, how did this start? And this was started evidently according to the Fifth Estate program, which aired in January 2022. I can't remember what the name of that was. Graves in the Apple Orchard, something like that. You can watch, just go Fifth Estate Kamloops. This was the most outrageous CBC quote unquote documentary you can imagine. And we had buffering. Oh no. Things aren't working today. Sorry, people. Hopefully it's getting better. It says my signal is fine. Anyway, Dina Jules. Dina Jules was responsible, according to this Fifth Estate program, for going to look for the kids. She had evidently known since she was a young girl that there were bodies on this site. That's what she said. Nonsense. Maybe she's misremembering, but that's not true. No one said anything about this till after the announcement was made. They built a heritage site, like a museum, on an area with a whole bunch of children's bodies buried there, if they knew. And there's no cemetery on near the school. It's about 5 kilometers to the west. It's a cemetery with, I might say, many unmarked graves, because the grave markers have all deteriorated. So Dina Jules is one of the major people involved in this. Other ones are Ted Godfredson. I'm going to talk about him. Jeanette Jules. I'm going to talk about her. Of course, Casimir. Don Worm, who's the legal side. Anyway, a whole bunch of band members have been involved in this whole fabrication. So that was 72 days before the announcement, the 5th anniversary of the announcement. So that's kind of what I'm doing. And so I want to go, what would be the next thing that happened after Dina Jules using this $40,000 heritage grant to go look for the children and get Sarah Bollier in there to do the GPR work. Like that was kind of what happened. Then there was a bunch of, it was called, I believe it's called pre-confirmation, which is where you go and do the ceremonies, the spiritual ceremonies with the tobacco ties and so on, so that so that you can confirm the remains of children. So all this is very, very unscientific. And of course, Sarah Bollier is a conflict anthropologist, not an archaeologist. And archaeologists don't have any ability to do GPR anyway, because you need geophysics to do GPR work, as Simon and I are finding out with in our documentary Dig that we're doing. Okay, so that's kind of what I'm doing with respect to that. Now back to the number 74 days, the city of Calgary. So the plan is, as I'm getting my billboard, my sandwich board together, which says what remains on the front and denial or truth on the back. And this starts at, well, people are going to be there at 10, and then the march starts at 10:30. So I'm not sure what time I'm going to get there, but I want to get there and just going to stand just with my sandwich board on, and we can talk about the evidence and stuff for people who come. So if you want to have some discussions about the evidence for the remains of 215 children at the Kamloops Indian Residential School, something that this memorial was put up to memorialize, then you can come to the City Hall. So it's City Hall, I think it's on McLeod Trail. Yeah, City Hall is on McLeod Trail, and I don't know what the cross street is, but just come down there. There's going to be a number of people there. I'm going to be live streaming it because I want to know how many people at this thing actually think that there are remains of 215 children that have been confirmed at the Kamloops Indian Residential School. I'm not sure. So maybe they just think this memorial is for, the fact that some people were mistreated at residential schools, which is, no one's disputing that. Or maybe they're talking about the unmarked graves that were marked once in cemeteries. That might be another situation to look at. So I don't know what this thing is about, except they have the 215 tobacco ties, and they have all these shoes that were put there as a, trying to mimic like the Holocaust remembrance kinds of displays. But of course, the Holocaust remembrance displays, the shoes in those were shoes that were actually worn by children who died. Whereas these shoes are just a bunch of plastic garbage that people have thrown into this place. It's an incredible eyesore. Anyway. Okay, so that's kind of what's happening. And I kind of want to follow the chronology now with the, tomorrow's going to be 71. So I'm thinking next to Dina Jules, I'm probably going to talk about Ted Godfredson. And then we're going to get into the announcement and Tanya Talaga. And then we're going to get into Murray Sinclair, the role that he played. And then we're going to get into the International Criminal Court complaint. And then we get to the Sarah Beaulier presentation. And then there's a whole bunch of different things that happen. So I'm going to follow that chronology a little bit up until, I don't know how many important events there are between May 2021, so May 27th, 2021, and May 27th, 2026. Because I just want to have kind of constant attention on the 5th anniversary. Like we must have truth at Kamloops. That's what I was yelling at UBC. We must have truth. We must have truth at Kamloops, and maybe I'll be doing that at the City Hall. Like this is really important, and I'm kind of amazed that people say, "Oh well, it's just a technical detail. What does it matter whether a whole bunch of people think that the remains of 215 children are just were buried clandestinely at this residential school?" And I think the fact that we can't have truth on this claim means we're in serious trouble as a society. And I just want to keep on pushing ahead and making demands for truth on this. And the only way we're going to get truth is through excavations. That's it. There's no other way to do it. It's not through the records, because the records aren't going to tell you there's a bunch of clandestine burials in the apple orchard. It's not through the knowledge keepers, because the knowledge keepers misremember. And it's not through GPR, because GPR just tells you that it's anomalies, targets of interest, and those are not, they're not distinct. Like you can have one signal, like a marker, like a hit on the GPR that could mean animal burrows, cobbles. Usually it's a more severe kind of signal if it's got electroconductivity. The more electroconductivity, the more extreme the signal. But that's pretty much it. And there's a whole bunch of things that could be that. So, and we know the septic tiles are in that area. So these could easily be septic tiles. Okay, so let's take some questions. Okay, hopefully the buffering stopped. Loving the countdown. Great job. Yeah, so I think it's working a bit. It keeps the pressure on. Like that's the important thing to do. Just keep on with the pressure. And going and having public kind of displays this is important. Like, I really don't think, although I think writing newspaper articles and so on is great for posterity, it doesn't really do very much in the here and now in terms of getting people to understand the seriousness of this situation. Will you and Michelle Sterling be doing color commentary for the the Equinox Spirit transfer? I think Michelle is a bit nervous about having these kinds of interactions. And I know a lot of people are, but I'm not. I'm not at all. And I really don't think I'm going to get assaulted. I know people are telling me that I am, but I can't see how that's going to happen. And if it does, this is a serious issue. So, I really don't want to get hurt, but hey, it'll be another Joan of Arc, one of my Joan of Arc moments. At least I don't think I'm going to get burned at the stake, right? That's what used to happen. We don't want to go back to the burning at the stake. Like we could. It's possible. Like if we keep on this road, this is possible. How much did you miss? Well, I went through the countdown, so I explain what each day, 76 days till 75 days. Keep going. Delusion isn't what we built our laws around. It's true. Like people who don't think that the truth matters. What the fuck? I think that's kind of my response. Like if you don't think the truth matters, what do you think matters? Well, I guess compassion. It's better to be compassionate and untruthful than truthful and not compassionate. That's kind of the woke position. Well, they don't believe in the objective truth anyway, so it's easy for them. They can just, go on, bang on about compassion all the time. But why isn't getting people to understand the truth compassionate? That's a question. So is it good for people to believe lies and falsehoods? That's going to enable them to be deceived. And we don't want to be deceived. As people keep on telling me over and over again, and I have to keep on saying this to myself because I do this myself as well, and I think it's Bertrand Russell, the great Bertrand Russell, we must face the world as it is, not as we want it to be. And that is, I would like to live by those words. And, if I have to admit terrible harms that I've created and I've been a terrible person for doing something or these kinds of things, which is possible, I've got to face that. I've got to face that head on, and I've got to come to terms with my mistakes. And I hope I can do that. Can a class action, civil action be filed? Says Greta. I don't know. This guy who's berating me all the time. That's not his suggestion. I don't even know what legal action is possible. My view would be it's going to be highly unlikely that you're going to get anywhere with any legal action because they're going to say, what standing do you have to bring this? This is the government that gave the funds. The government's got to be accountable. And the problem is that we don't have any accountability in the House of Commons or the Senate. Neither of those two things are acting in an accountable way. And, the Senate has always been a bit murky as to how much it can hold to account, but that's its function. Sober second thought. But the House of Commons, this is a scandal that typically would be seized upon by the opposition. Hillary says it's certainly a breach of contract. Yes, it is, but it's a contract with the government. In order for the government to make sure its contracts are not breached, it has to do something, and it's not going to do anything because it's too embarrassed about all the fact that it was acting in a ridiculous way for years. So I understand why the government's doing what it's doing. Like that, it wants to hide its incompetence or what is it, treachery or duplicity, mendacity. It wants to hide its mendacity. But the conservatives have no reason not to hold the government to account, except the big question, which is why is the Aboriginal industry so powerful in Canada? And that's the neo-tribal elites and the consultants and lawyers. We have to be very careful here, and I want to say this very strongly. It's not ordinary Aboriginal people. Ordinary Aboriginal people they've got nothing to do with it. It's got to do with these rent-seeking entities which are trying to extract funds and then distribute it amongst themselves, and those funds go to the people who are privileged and are taken away from the impoverished and the marginalized. So it's compassionate to draw attention to this, because this is the way we're going to have funding devoted to things that funding needs to be devoted to. So that's got to be kept in mind, because there's a lot of racism that goes on about this issue. And we don't want to fight racism with racism. Two wrongs don't make a right. We need to really move forward to let people know that we need truth for everyone. Truth benefits everyone. Well, it doesn't benefit the people who are trying to deceive people. They said they'd excavate to get the money. Yes, they did. Did they intend to excavate? That's the question. If they did, it's not fraud. If they didn't intend, it's fraud. And it looks like they intended to. Something happened in between the intent and then the current situation. But we can't have transparency on it, because it's all been redacted, all the records from Blacklock's that Blacklock's got. How long has this premiere been playing for? It's been going on. I had some problems with the first one because it wouldn't start. It said, you can't live stream at this time. And so then I started a new link and it worked. So it's been going on for around 30 minutes. Oh, 9 minutes at that time. Hello, Tokyo Speedboy. I'm not sure if you want your actual name to be mentioned. Grift. Yeah, some of it's grift. Some of it's just people who misremember, and they want to believe that a genocide has happened. And that's a question that needs to be asked. Why do you want to believe that genocide has happened? Why do leaders want us to believe that we are citizens of a genocidal country? Usually it's the opposite, that countries kind of, beat their chest and say how wonderful they are. That often happens. But this time it's the other way around. So why is that? Is that like a Yuri Bezmenov evidence that you're demoralizing people? You're trying to demoralize them for various reasons? Is that what's going on? Winter. What else is going here? More virtue signaling. Yeah, that's what it is. This country is done. Alberta 51. Come on, we have to act like it's not. We have to keep on trying. Fight. Even if it is done, we need to document the destruction for future generations. That's always been my approach. And, why not? And then Wintertime says, are you saying that they are not letting you ask questions because of your safety? No, I'm not saying that. What's happening is, when I announce that I'm going to be going in there with the sandwich boards, saying what remains, that's my question. And I'm going to be standing to the side. I'm not going to do the mistake that I did at UBC, where I don't know where I thought I was going to be going. I went marching in there with Drew Coover, and we're trying to weave our way through all the Antifa types and whatnot. And like, why didn't we just stand back and let them come? I was going to. So I'm not going to be doing that. I'm just going to be standing off to the side, and people can come up to me. and asked me, like, what am I doing, or what does this mean, or etc. Anyway, what's happening is a bunch of people are, or at least one guy, is berating me for inciting, like not a hostile party, a friendly, supposedly friendly person giving me advice that this is incitement, what I'm doing, and I could somehow be charged because I'm inciting. How is that? I don't understand how that's inciting. I'm asking a question, which is completely valid, I might add, because what is this all about? This is crazy. That we're almost 5 years in now. Anyone who's paying attention knows that it's not true. Some people think it is true. Often in the universities, you see that a lot in the universities, but I don't know in terms of the general public. I've heard it's about 2/3 think that there should be more evidence. So I don't think the general public buys it, but then we don't really know. That was an odd poll that was done by Angus Reid. It's NLT. It's not. Sorry, I'm not sure what that was. What that was about. Greta, if you could put that in just the question, if you want that answered, I don't know. 11 years, I stand corrected. I don't know what that means. Buffering. Oh, I hate that. I hope it wasn't buffering too much. Yeah, as other people say, it's working fine. Okay, so that was just a temporary glitch. Everything seems to be falling apart. That's why I'm drinking non-alcoholic drinks these days, because I gotta be on top of everything. John Corey says, you will never see shovels in the ground. It's highly likely we will never see shovels in the ground. But we've got to press as hard as we can. Remember, it's not about the end result. That's not what these things are about. These things are about constant pressure. Constant pressure must be placed on the system to see how it's going to react. If it were reacting properly, we would have the opposition asking questions in the House of Commons. There would be the media that would be covering the opposition, asking questions, and then there would be more pressure that would be placed, and maybe something would happen eventually, but that doesn't seem to be going on. I thought she knew where the children are. Is that Dina Jules? They thought they were going to look for the kids, and the apple orchard as well was scanned because of some misleading artifacts that were claimed to exist, like a juvenile tooth and human rib bone that was said to have surfaced in that area. But then it turned out it wasn't a human tooth. No, the archaeology department had refuted that. And the rib bone, no one knows where that is, which of course is highly improbable. If you've got a human rib bone, you don't just put it on a shelf somewhere and don't worry about it. If that human rib belongs to somebody and it's in a clandestine area, it's not in a cemetery. Like if a rib bone surfaces in a cemetery, it's like, oops. Like there's this guy in I think it was Blue Quills, but it might have been another one. He for some reason was taking an excavator and doing excavations in a cemetery. So as a result of him doing that, he unearthed a number of skeletons. It's like, why does that guy have an excavation in a cemetery? Isn't that a bit insensitive to the remains? Anyway, that was one example of bones surfacing. Oopsie. Shoot. What else is going on here? Sorry, I accidentally skipped down. You can never be, okay, so I thought she knew what the children are. Greta, you can never be sure with ghosts. They move around. They can turn into birds. It's proven. Yeah. Ghosts. Are people talking about ghosts? I know the spirits. They're saying the spirits of the children. And I guess spirits and ghosts, they can be the same thing. LSD flashbacks. Yeah, hallucinations. Hallucinations of various kinds. Are just, misremembering. That's often what this is. The satanic panic comes to mind. What about dental records, says Emath Cat. Dental records for whom? So we have no missing children. No one said as a child has gone missing. So who is the entities that we're looking for dental records for? It's like starting at the wrong side of the telescope. We get the bodies, the remains, and then now we got to do forensics and find out who these people are. But we don't have any people that we're looking at. And it's highly improbable we're going to have people, because not one parent has said that their child never came home. Yes, we need the truth. Of course. Who is arguing we don't need the truth? Lots of people are, I know, but I find that to be the most surprising thing of all. It's not misremember, it's outright lie. Well, some of it is misremembering, some of it is lying. And we don't know, it's hard to tell the difference. So that's kind of the problem. Jeanette Jules, for example. So Jeanette Jules in 2013 said that never mentioned anything about bodies being buried or unmarked graves. That was for the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. She's a knowledge keeper. Then in 2022, after the Kamloops announcement, she started talking about all the children buried on the grounds. So she's just accepting that, or is she consciously lying about that? She might not remember the testimony that she gave in 2013. Hillary says CBC did a doc on Kamloops in the IRS in the 1960s called The Eyes of Children. Yes, I highly recommend that. I've watched it many times now. For one thing, it has 3 Aboriginal teachers, which are Annie Sproul, I think her name was, a guy who was the head of the Adams Lake Band, and Paul, his name is last name Paul, and they were all, well, 2 of them, the chief of the Adams Lake Band and this guy Paul, were both very well known, and they never said, these teachers, these Aboriginal teachers, would have just looked the other way when all these children were being put in these mass graves. So that's one of the most interesting things about that Eyes of Children. But if you look at the footage, you see children running around playing and stuff. We're not talking, and they had a swimming pool at that school, an Olympic-sized swimming pool. They had dance lessons, all these sorts of things. So why would they be, if they wanted to just exterminate people, why would they be doing that? Yep. The live streaming protects you. They don't want to get busted. Okay. Sorry. What is Calgary's motivation for this spectacle? Well, they got a bit of a problem with this memorial, what to do with it. It was kind of the same thing that happened with the flags at half-mast. If you just take all those shoes and dump them in the garbage, it's kind of admitting it was all a bunch of nonsense, and that they participated in this for 5 years. The longer you go, the harder it becomes, which is why it's going to be so hard for them on Friday. It has to be made as hard as it can for them. They need to be lambasted for what they've done, which is deceive the Canadian public with this memorial. Anyway, so they don't know really what to do, and the way to do it is to kind of not really, just kind of pretend that they're just got to move it to a more permanent thing. And I should mention, 7 $7 million is going to be spent on the new memorial. You know, for us in Calgary who are dealing with serious infrastructural problems like the water supply, we're going to spend $7 million on bronzing a bunch of horrible plastic shoes that should just be thrown in the garbage. Yes, so dental records, Len says, dental records for bodies that have been recovered. No bodies have been recovered. Yes, so I don't know how dental records would help us at all with any of this. Compassion for what? Compassion for Aboriginal people. That's the claim. If you want to, you know, you're worried about Aboriginal marginalization and deprivation, you must affirm the genocide survivor identity. That's how you're going to be compassionate and show you care. But of course, those two things are not related. And in fact, Aboriginal people have said it, they find it to be traumatizing, all these discussions about genocide. So maybe you're adding to their poor mental health, this constant talking about genocide. Lord Russell, my namesake. Okay. That's Bertrand Russell. Yeah. Bertrand Russell, my view, one of the greatest philosophers that ever lived. I love his book, The History of Western Philosophy. I had put WebGuard on to watch this, or it was a glitchy. Stasi preventing me from watching her live. I don't think I'm that significant at this time, so I don't think you have to worry about that. I'm not very much consequence. Greta, Mary Simon is a real problem. Yes, Mary Simon is a serious problem, and she came to the 2022 memorial, which is going to be one of my countdown days. That was a crazy event held in Kamloops at the residential school in the Powwow Arbor. And you had all these speeches. The Governor General was there, all these notables for talking about something that everyone ought to have known was not the case. It was like 10 months after Sarah Bollier's presentation. Money is, says Barnum, DC Barnum. Money, I don't know what that refers to, but often that's a reason why we see the things happening, is that it's about money. Follow the money. Vancouver Canucks will soon be renamed the Musqueam Sniper. That's a good one. Stranger things have happened. Greedy men in power. Same crap, different time. Possibly that's a factor, but I think there's some substantial systemic reasons why people are promoting this claim and the genocide identity. If they're relying on a worldview not to dig, wouldn't that worldview have been in place when this story broke? Yeah, well, the demand was for excavations. Like there was a lot of lobbying for the excavations to be done initially. And the application was about the same time Sarah Bollier gave her presentation. So no one seemed to have noticed that Sarah Bollier said that remains had not been confirmed. If they're relying on that's just nonsense. This worldview stuff, it's made up. It's just a way of obfuscating everything. Hillary says, I think what happened to stop the dig is that they found the records from the archaeology The cadaver dogs found nothing, and maybe they had a negative DNA test. Maybe. I suspect that the questioning of it, when people started to question it, that's when they thought, oh, if we go in there and find that remains haven't been found, this is going to be trouble for us. Casimir, so they were saying excavations at the 2022 memorial at the arbor. Casimir, when she was ambushed, that's not the right word. I know Drea was doing a great job there. Drea Humphrey from Rebel News. If you watch The Buried Truth, which is that documentary, excellent documentary, Drea sort of saw Casimir doing something. She went up to her and then filmed her and recorded her. And Casimir said she wasn't sure whether excavations were going to take place at that time. So there had been a change in about the course of a week. And that happened immediately after the 2022 memorial. So that probably had something to do with it. Kind of discussions that were going on after that memorial. More than 100,000 British children, known as British home children, were sent from the UK to Canada between 1869 and the 1940s, often went to work as indentured farm laborers or domestic servants. Yes, and we often don't think about those children, and often buried in paupers' graves with wooden markers that deteriorated too. Sorry, yeah, okay, that was the home children. I'm sure they were treated proper based solely because they were pale skinned. Yeah, like this is sort of the poor people. Poor people are treated badly, regardless of their skin color. Rich people tend to be treated well. Now, sometimes you have rich people who have dark skin who are treated worse than rich people with light skin. This topic seems off limits for all political parties again. Yes, it is off limits, except for 1BC. That was the only party that was doing anything about it. I don't understand. Like, there's things going on here that have a lot of deeply rooted basis. This topic seems off limits for political. Yep. This country is such a bloody joke. It is kind of embarrassing. Like, we used to be sort of respected. Now we're seen as like the wokest of the woke. Rock BR says, will you put your lectures up or join another university? What are your plans for working in academia? Well, I'm trying with all of my might to get reinstated at Mount Royal University, which is where I was wrongfully terminated. My case is right now before the Alberta Labor Relations Board. They're going to come out with a decision in 3 months from, it went on February 6th, so it's going to be February, March, April, May 6th. Is that correct? May 6th. They're going to decide what's going to happen, which is nothing monumental. Is it going to go back to is nothing going to happen? Is it going to go back to the same arbitrator, the imperious and inept David Philip Jones, who just gave this embarrassing decision? So we were trying hard to say it should not go back to this arbitrator. Like, this arbitrator is not good. And we hopefully made a case that would not be, we would not be happy about that. So it is maybe going to go back to another arbitrator. So then it goes through another couple of years of nonsense. But hey, you got to make them justify themselves. That's my whole thing. Is you've got to justify yourself. Put your reasons on paper, and then we can critique them and keep on going. And hopefully I'm going to be appealing it all the way up. Well, I have to, of course, deal with my union. My union has to do it. But my union is unbelievably treacherous. In fact, they're responsible for my situation. and they've fomented the people who don't want me to be reinstated. It's unbelievable what has happened with respect to them. They are a complete. It's scary because you're so much dependent on the union. But I do not care. I am going to hold this union to account. I'm going to hold the university to account, and they can just do whatever they're going to do. Anyway, so that's what I'm trying to do with all my might. I'm happy to go to any university and give talks if people invite me. So all that has to happen is the professor has to invite me. And I'd love to do a panel with Aaron Pete. We were trying to get that done at Simon Fraser University, but there's a lot of people got all concerned because of Francis Widdowson's confrontational kinds of things that were happening at UBC and so on. Well, it's gonna get ugly, so we shouldn't do that. But yeah, I'm hoping to sit down with Aaron Pete, and then on April I'm hoping to go down to Lethbridge, because I've made a promise that Lethbridge is my jewel in the crown, and I want to go sit down at a table and have some coffees with students over a number of days in April at the University of Lethbridge. And this has caused people like Jessica Copley to become really upset, so much they got to have a town hall to figure out how to keep me out of there. It's not going to work, Jessica. I'm coming in. What's wrong with me having some coffees with students? I fail to see how this is a huge issue. Hi, professional. The number of anomalies went from 215 to 200. What happened to the other 15? Maybe you already answered this. Yes. So that is a very important part, and I'm going to do that for one of the days of the countdown, which is going to be the archaeology department at Simon Fraser. So that's one of the reasons I think too that Simon Fraser doesn't want me there, is because I will start yakking about their archaeology department, which is has been a part of the story. The archaeology department. So the archaeology department, George Nicholas, who is the guy who was like had his nose up to Kamloops's butt. He was like a advocacy archaeologist, and he's doing excavations. They're culturally sensitive stuff, and he did the excavations in that area, shovel test pits and so on. And so Sarah Bollier, because she's an unbelievable incompetent, she didn't do any preliminary scoping about what had happened. So she didn't know that there had been excavations done in that area when she came out with the 215 number. And it looks like she sent the report or whatever, her data. I don't think she did a report, but she sent her data to the archaeology department at SFU. And SFU said, hey, do you know that there were excavations done in this particular area where you have the 15 of these anomalies? And that led Sarah Bollier to have to walk back the 215 number to 200. Yeah, and this is covered. Simon Hargott and I are covering this in DIG. We go through. We had a GPR expert that we were interacting with. Yeah, and so if she were wrong, if Sarah Bollier was wrong on the 15, why isn't she wrong on all the 200, all the other 200? It's a narrative. Rogue Primate says the British Home Children from a London work hospital was my grandfather in one, and they started and escaped and joined up with their Canadian military to get back to England. Yeah, there's a lot of really sad stories of people. The best lies are mostly true. I guess so, because that makes it a lot easier to believe the lie. It's because you see most of it is true and you think it must all be true. That would make sense. The knowledge keepers in Ottawa and Victoria have been doing a fantastic job keeping knowledge from the Canadian citizenry. Yeah. This term, the knowledge keepers. There is no such thing as a knowledge keeper. Knowledge is not kept. That's a preacher. That's what we're talking about. You give a sermon, everyone's got to accept it. Knowledge is, well, it's contested the definition, but I believe it's justified true belief. So it has to be true, first of all, and then it's not just only true, it's justified. Like because you can think something is true and it's not justified. Like you dreamt something. Like, for example, I lost my car keys. I dreamt that my car keys were, somewhere in the bushes. I look and I find the bushes. I go in the bushes and there they are. Well, that doesn't mean that it was justified for me to believe that. It was true, but there's no reason why I would have been able to dream that my car keys were under the bushes. Spirit walk happens in Calgary. Oh, okay. The professional. Spirit walk happens when in Calgary? So the walk is happening at 10:30 in front of City Hall, where the memorial is. People are going to be there evidently at 10, I guess maybe giving speeches and stuff like that. And they have 215 tobacco ties, which are prayers for the spirits of the children, and who knows what else. And then they're all going to pick up all these shoes, and they're going to walk to Fort Calgary to kind of house these shoes and what's going to be the permanent memorial. And I'm just going to show up at about, I'm not going to say, because I'm going to be there, and I'm going to have my sandwich board on, and it's going to say what remains, which I think is a perfectly legitimate question. What remains? And then 215. Which reminds me, I forgot to call in my grommet. I have to do a measurement from my neck to get the grommets placed in the right way. The professional's professional. Become a knowledge keeper. Yeah, maybe I am. It's all self-declared. The CBC was beautiful. It was obvious how much the children loved the priests and nuns. It was a marvelous place. Well, you know what they say about that. They got the children to, play act. They did stuff. They made them do things, and the children had to do it. Otherwise, that's kind of the claim. But it seems highly unlikely that you would be able to have that level of, coordination to get children to act that way. TV series 1983, 1920, 1883, 1923, Yellowstone, etc. are examples of how stories tend to grow into nightmares. Yeah, no, it just is. Stories are stories. Stories may be true, stories may not be true, but we can't just take people. Just can't take people at their word. Like this whole thing about believe survivors. We should not believe survivors. We should not disbelieve survivors. So survivors may be true, maybe not be true. It depends on the corroborating evidence as to whether we think it's true. When is the $7 million march? Yeah, it is March 20th, Friday, March 20th, this Friday, in front of City Hall. And it's going to be, looks like 10 o'clock, 10:30. Brienne says, how do they know that the children were, and I don't believe any were indeed murdered without a single body. Yeah. The murdered is really like that's like not just bodies, it's like murdered children. That's what my nemesis Gabrielle Weasel had said, is that the murders of 215 children. I had to cry. I went and called my mother because after I heard about the murders of 215 children. But of course, if you hear about a mass grave, clandestine burials, something definitely was, foul play of some kind. Because if it were just disease, why wouldn't they be put in a cemetery? Every child we have a name for, and there's all sorts of cemeteries. The children at the Kamloops Indian Residential School were buried. But most of the children that are documented that died didn't die at the school. 2 out of the 49 that were documented. The others died in their home communities. They died in accidents. They died in hospital. Compassionate lies. Sorry, I skipped again. It's not going up. I skipped over things. Shaky Pete. Compassionate to lies and humiliation. I've had enough. Yes, me too. I've had enough of this. And the only way to do it is through public kind of displays. If you just write things, it's just ignored. I think that writing is important. Obviously, I'm an academic, so that's what I did for years. And 4.5, I was writing all these things. We did all that. A lot of the good things got published. That's the latest. I've got 2 chapters in that book. So I'm not opposed to writing. I just think at this stage, it's of limited effect because you can just be ignored. And we can't be ignored anymore. That's the kind of the key, is to stop from being ignored. The professionals. Make a t-shirt with the 215, put a shovel and 1 and ask a question mark as the 5. Yep, that's effective. So 215, just a shovel as the 1 and a question mark as the 5. Yep. Like all these things. T-shirts are good. Like, I personally find the where are the bodies signs to be a little bit problematic. Because, first of all, there are bodies in cemeteries. So that's where the body, like it's the clandestine burials that we're talking about. So when you say where are the bodies, you get, people like Sean Carlton saying, we have all these documented deaths. There are bodies. It's like, well, that's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about clandestine burials. I'm a historic figure, a big deal. It's an honor to chat with you. Thanks, Hillary. I don't think so. I don't know why people, and I'm not like being like, I think I've done some things. I have some skills. I don't think I'm useless, but I'm not really having very much of an impact, if I'm honest. I'm trying to pressure. That's my motto, constant pressure. What's going on Friday at City Hall? So Friday at City Hall at 10 o'clock, there's going to be a bunch of people gathered to have speeches so that they can take the shoes in the memorial over, and 215 tobacco ties. And tobacco ties are prayers for the spirits of the children. And it's called the Transfer of the Spirit March. And they're going to march all these items in the memorial over to what used to be called Fort Calgary. And I'm going to be there with my sandwich board, which says what remains, 215 question mark. Just to find out how many people think that. And I want to draw attention to this propaganda. Why not? Everyone says, this guy's kind of harassing me. That's incitement. Incitement. It's like, how is that incitement? It's just a question. Questions are now incitement? I remember the Canadian Heritage Minute about the Irish orphans adopted by French Canadians. Yes, I know. It's all these sad stories. Poor people, marginalized people. It doesn't really have that much to do with your ancestral background. It's whether you have power because of your wealth, your birth, your position in society, and we've got to focus on that. The problem is class. That's the problem. We should be focusing on class, not on race, not on trans, except to say that's a mental illness. And you need help. You need help so that you can get your fetish under control or get your dysphoria under control. Embrace your homosexuality. There's nothing wrong with, well, you know, as Seinfeld said, not that there's anything wrong with that. To each his own. And they said, let us keep our Irish names. John, Canada, Catholic schools run by clergy are known to be much more disciplined. Yes. Like my husband's from Montreal, and often parents, they noticed that the children who were in Catholic schools had more rigorous kinds of methods. Of course, there's other problems, but we'll leave that alone. Daniel, nice to see Daniel. Academic unions are in such a poor state, CAUT included. Yes, they are. That's one of the huge problems at universities. The treachery and mendacity of the unions, CAUT included. CAUT is the union that took on my case. Fortunately, they did, because money was spent that wouldn't have been spent otherwise. Millions of dollars has been spent on my case. But like, for example, they're woke. They're completely woke. Like, it's kind of funny because my lawyer has pronouns in her bio and everything. All the CAUT lawyers have pronouns in their bio. And then the guy who's representing MRU, Michael Ford, he doesn't understand wokeism at all. He's just like, it's a complete rough diamond. And he is, he's a pit bull. So it's like, why can't I have the pit bull? I got to have the woke people. Although Leanne Chawley, I got to give her credit. She did a great, great defense of me in before the labor board. But CAUT, they did a couple of really unbelievable things. One of them was in October 2024, I signed up for the CAUT conference on indigenization. I went to Regina to do it. And they, because I wanted to take notes and see what they were doing with indigenization, CAUT, Canadian Association of University Teachers, they deregistered me. They wouldn't allow me to attend the CAUT conference on indigenization. That was scary. I was like, whoa, daddy. Kevin's here. My friend Kevin Byrne. He's a great kind of critic. I love his criticisms. Simon Fraser dug up the areas where the 15 were supposed to be buried. Yes, they did. It was excavations. It was shovel test pits. Yes, should have been, Sarah Bollier should have known. She should have done her due diligence. SFU scared to death. Yeah, they are. They've got crazy people at SFU. It's going to be at least as crazy. Well, as Lord Russell said, we wanted to do an FU SFU event because of their bullshit about not inviting me with Aaron Pete because they got scared. So let's go in FU SFU and do another UBC kind of type thing. I've been reading the insults on the Facebook countdown threads. You are described as in part as crusty. You should own that. I love it. Don't make me crusty, or crusty time, friends. Don't make me crusty. And also Krusty is Krusty the Clown as well. That's the other kind of good reference. I don't know if I did a good Krusty there. Knowledge keeper, bullshitter, outright liar. Yeah, like, or just misremember. Like, we guys always got to keep the misremembering in there. It's like people want to go to the lies and We don't really know. Like Ted Godfreyson, that guy is not a liar. He's many things, Ted Godfreyson Jr., but he's not a liar because he's too, you know, what's the word? Naive and not very sophisticated to be able to, you know, be a critical thinker. He's not a critical thinker. Hello, Ramrod. I don't know what that is. What is Ramrod? Shoot. Ramrod. Oh, Ramrod, yeah. So that was your comment about the knowledge keeper equals bullshit or there. Well, that definitely, there's many of them that are like that. By memorial, she means junk ball. Yeah, it's a complete eyesore with all these horrible plastic shoes and, you know, dirty teddy bears that have been rained on and whatever for the last 4 years. It's just grotesque. And now they're going to take all these grotesqueries over to Fort Calgary with the tobacco ties. It's the elders who have perpetuated the false narrative when they should have been telling their kids and grandkids to get out in the world and make something of yourself. Yeah, many have. Yeah, you know, like what are these people all doing? Like they're just trying to, you know, divert transfers and get sympathy. As I said, 2019, there was a meeting to say, hey, people don't care enough. How can we get the public to care? Well, you do all these unmarked grave searches and you find, you know, remains of 215 children. Then people care. It's like, oh, what's happened? Some people like to think what you want. Everyone's entitled to their own opinion. Just avoid the truth. Yes, that's correct. Knowledge keeper knights. We could have the Canucks. What was it? The Musqueam Snaggers or something. It's like the knowledge keeper knights. Dead wrong is fantastic. Yeah, it's good. I'm not sure which is better, grave error or dead wrong. Alicia, sorry. Thank you for your bravery. I appreciate you, and I have shared yours. Thanks a lot. Yeah, that's all we can do. You know, I have I've been cultivating my steadfastness and my ability to withstand taunting of all kinds. You know, and that's a good skill to have. You should never allow someone to rile you up by just calling you names. Who cares? Who cares what someone who you don't even know is saying about you? If it's a friend of yours, like one of my friends won't talk to me anymore because I said orange shirt crybullies. They're not going to socialize with me anymore. I was like, I don't know. I don't think orange shirt crybullies is that bad, you know, and it's accurate. Like crybully is not ad hominem. There is such a thing as a crybully, which is when you go and attack people, and then when you get kind of challenged, you go back and you say, "Oh, poor me, I'm a victim." So that's what a crybully is. It's not. I don't know why this friend of mine is so upset about me saying orange shirt crybully. She says I'm not a bridge builder. I'm increasing divisions. That's her criticism. Can you put your boards on your boards the figure of the Irish students who lived? That'd be a big board. So that's the figure of the Irish students who the number. Yeah, I don't know. That's something that would be really hard to determine. Kevin, if you want to draw attention to them, call them ghost tobacco busters. Good one, Kevin. Love it. Love it. Yeah, laughing my ass off. Kevin. What was that again? I got to remember this. I got to remember all these really good sayings. Krusty, just call me Krusty, and ghost tobacco busters. Yeah, I think that satire or like jokes are appropriate for this kind of nonsense. Like I mock smudging. So I'm known for that. Get the cigarettes out. Because yeah, it's supposed to be sweetgrass or sage, like not cannabis. But cannabis is my sacred herb. So I'm going to use cannabis. And you're not supposed to blow, because that makes the spirits in your mouth something to do with your spit gets on the smoke, and that destroys the sacred. It's like, come on, people. How do we know that? Maybe the spit makes it more spiritual. It puts some of yourself into the smoke. Especially you're controlling ghosts of the tobacco fetish. Kevin, you're too much, Kevin. Keep them coming. I now have been following you for some years. Have you tried to open a line of communication with the Alberta government? Yes. And they are useless. And Lethbridge. Why Lethbridge is not being pulled, what is it? Pulled onto the carpet? Is that the saying? They're our second time violator. What they did at the University of Lethbridge is just completely unhinged. There's no room for error here. It's just obvious, just giving the finger to the government's free speech policy. So you're just going to do nothing, government. That's it. They can just violate the free speech policy. They got to get me back there. So invite Francis Whittleson to have a panel with Aaron Pete and Leroy Littlebear and Jessica Copley, or your funding's going to be yanked. That's what should be the ultimatum. And stop the lawsuit. I should mention I'm going to court. I forgot to mention this. This is coming up. April 10th in Calgary, the University of Lethbridge case is finally going to court. You know, after many procedural kinds of nonsense. Like, this is the problem with the law, is that they tie you up with all their procedures. Anyway, Glenn Blackett is going to be making arguments on April 10th. I think it's in the courthouse. So I think it's public. I'm going. I'm going to start announcing it closer to the time. There are Rogue Primate. There are many unmarked graves in remote rural cemeteries all over Canada, especially the prairies. Yes, abandoned cemeteries. They're unmarked graves all over the place. Citrus W81 says, "What is your opinion of the white goose flying report?" I got to tell you, I don't know what that is, and it's because my bandwidth is really seriously exceeded right now. So maybe put it in. What is it? Just let me know. Sorry, I'm an ignoramus. I'm not up to date on many things because I'm so busy, you know, surviving, trying to keep on top of all the problems that I'm facing, all of my various obligations. On X, I have argued that you are among the most important Canadian public intellectuals of our times, like Peterson, Party, Flamingo, etc. That's Angelo. Oh, well, thank you so much. I don't want to have false modesty here, because I think that's disingenuous. You know, I think I've done some things. I'm stubborn. I try to follow things through. Like, I'm Super Nanny Franny. I just follow through with the discipline. I keep on coming back, try to get people to talk. You know, I think that's a good method. I've had some success. If the problem is that people are now getting so deranged that you have to do it for all night. And I was going to do that at Lethbridge. Tony Hall and I were hunkered down. My husband and his wife left, thank goodness, because I wanted them to leave. Like, this is not for the faint of heart here. So Tony was going. He took this sign that I had said, which said "Cry bullies can't win," and he showed it to me and he put it in his pocket. He's like, "We're gonna stay here." So I was like, "Yeah, yes, I'm with you. I'm with you, brother." So we were gonna stay all night to see if we could outlast these cry bullies. But then, of course, the police hauled me out because they didn't want to have all their overtime devoted to that situation. Delusion is the more accurate term for misremembering. It's a dangerous mental state. Yes. Delusion. But we all misremember. When I was in Manitoba, Callum, who was the student I was talking to, this really nice student I was having the street epistemology with, he said his friend and he were walking over to this session, and his friend managed to implant a memory in his mind as they were walking. And because they were both Star Wars fans, and the friend kept on suggesting that there was this made up Star Wars character that the friend made up. And after about half an hour of suggesting this, Callum believed that there was this Star Wars character that didn't actually exist. So it's quite easy to do. And especially if people are very emotional and very disturbed, that's easier to do. I'd like to think I am, because I try to think critically about my memories, and I often write things down and record things so that I'm constantly remembering what I said. So I'm not subjected to that as much as many others are. Two of my great uncles died of diphtheria as young boys the same year of 1908 in Alberta. Yeah, lots of people. Cigarettes. Kevin, yes, joints. Okay. Cannabis sativa. That is my sacred herb. I don't smoke cigarettes. I have put a nicotine pouch in my cheek once just to see what would happen. It was a bad idea. Oh, that was just like, whoa. To smudge is to clean. I agree with your spit comment. Yeah, I think I don't see why smoking a joint and then blowing it all over yourself or whatever is less spiritual than taking a bunch of pot and putting it in a sacred bowl and then lighting it on fire and then doing that. Like, it's much better to smoke the joint and then blow it all over yourself. Then you get two things at the same time. Yeah. So Kevin says you get nowhere with the government because the Minister of Indigenous Affairs is from Miscasquis. Sorry, I don't know how to pronounce that. AKA Habima, I guess it was, which is Wilton. Yeah, no, it's just all corruption all the way through. But it's more than that. It's the government is pandering to Aboriginal groups. I think what's happening is the government wants to get them on side for its various manipulative tactics, and it doesn't want to piss them off about the residential schools. That's like, who cares? Who cares about whether people don't have a good understanding of the residential schools when you've got to get the groups to go along with the pipelines or whatever, and you're not going to ensnare that. I think that's partly what's going on, but there's probably more to it than that. Angelo, I don't handle compliments either. Well, I appreciate, like, I think it just as I think people are a bit too complimentary, I guess. I don't think it's that, like there's, like, I think I do some stuff, but I don't think it's at a level of what's being said. But maybe, I don't know. It'll depend. It's the test of time. Will people, when I'm taken out at the city of Calgary, will people remember me? Will I be remembered? Joking. That's a joke. Didn't Peterson and Gad said warn us a decade ago in front of the House of Commons Committee controlling speech was coming? Yes. It's like, you know, I was, you know, I was trying to, I've been fighting these kinds of things too, not as well as they obviously, but you know, I've, well, I can't remember when I became a free speech absolutist, because freedom of speech is the fundamental value, because it allows us to discuss all other values. Yes, Angelo, I'm certain that your commitment to these various issues is coming from a place of in defense of Indigenous people. I'm coming from the same place. I'm a huge fan of Native artists. Yeah, I would like to enable all people, regardless of their background, to be able to thrive. That's my goal, and I don't see how lying to people or telling them falsehoods enables people to thrive. And people who want you to spread falsehoods, what's their motivation? I think that's a very important question. Like, who's in favor of spreading falsehoods? But of course, the postmodernists came in and say there's no such thing as truth and falsehood. So therefore, you can't spread falsehoods because there's no truth. I'm distinguishing ordinary killer says I'm distinguishing ordinary misremembering from conviction of this genocide story that's really leading people to the grave. Yeah. Yeah. Well, this is a big one, the genocide stuff. It's like a hysteria. Tutu, Gook, etc. I'm terribly concerned that Indigenous people are being exploited for the gains of elites. They definitely are. They are being used. That's the reason why people are sympathetic and giving all these transfers, is because, hey, we've got serious problems in the communities. Fetal alcohol syndrome being the main one, which is not addressed at all. God knows how many. What's the percentage? Anyway, oh my goodness, it's an hour and a half. I had no idea. I was just, I'm a bit distracted because of all the problems I'm facing. I won't go into details. So this was good. This was good to kind of communicate with people and let them know what's going on. So you just have to keep on going. That's what you have to do. It doesn't matter how many setbacks you face, just keep going. And that's what I'm doing. Have you seen any of the ancient ceremonial razors that had been used to smolder cannabis, opium, and ephedra or ephedra plants at the same time? Yeah, and I haven't. Nope. Where can I get some? Yeah, I shouldn't let this be known. This is unprofessional for me to be sharing my situation, my bad habits. I sent Canadian author and federal senator recently retired a letter asking David Adams Richards to raise your name and situation in the Senate. I'm praying that elected politicians raise your name too. Yeah, it can't hurt. Yeah, I think Mount Royal has to take me back. You know, the fact that Mary Lee Mulholland thinks it's upsetting if I say there's only two sexes, or Gabrielle Weaselhead gets upset when I say there is no such thing as Indigenous science. So what? I think what they say is really stupid. So why can't we have people just not like what other people say in a university? I don't know why we have to have these, mascots that everyone's really concerned about and how they feel and whether they're upset. That's kind of the problem, is being concerned about whether Gabrielle Weaselhead is upset or not. Gabrielle Weaselhead can get upset. I'm not going to try to upset her. I try to stay away. Like I avoid her. But she just feels unsafe when I'm there. Even knowing that I'm there. Like, she doesn't even have to be in the same location. Just the fact that she knows she could bump into me at any time. It's very distressing. That I can bring your name and situation in my classroom. Yeah, that'd be great. YouTube channel Survive the Jive has a historical video on cannabis cults of the past. Okay. Daniel, thank you, Francis. I know it is not easy, but we must continue. Yes, Daniel. Daniel's doing his bit as well. We're currently trying to go after the University of Winnipeg for Daniel, fearing for his life that day in September. That was just unbelievable. The University of Winnipeg and the police. We're trying to hold the police to account for not showing up, which was shocking. Several people calling 911. The police just never came. And then they had Grandma Shingoose. Grandma, it's Grandma here. Grandma came and gave a presentation at the Sacred Fire ceremony 2 days later with the police chief. They were all celebrating her. She was one of the assaulters. One of the, the Sacred Circle of 7 assailants. She was one of the 7 assailants. You're winning, Francis. It's the start of something. Dig, yeah. Yeah, dig. Yep. Thrilled to be part of Krusty Time. I'll have to think about that. I like the unhappy hour. And then extreme unhappy hour. And overwrought unhappy hour. Because repressive tolerance is a weapon to control it. Yes. Herbert Marcuse. Marcusianism. That is wokeism, is Marcusianism. Who sold out the working class for identity politics. That's what Herbert Marcuse did. Yeah, you love. Oh, that's good. Thank you. Thank you. I'm glad. I have a lot of hate. There's a lot of hate and a lot of love. Or I see more of the hate. But I think things are moving. And I think that's at City Hall. That's why I think the things at the universities and the City Hall is so important. Is that we have to be in the public eye, and we have to, we have to be like, I know people see it as being confrontational, but I think that's the only thing that gets it so that people are seeing we got a serious problem. Like, who's going to know about this stupid shoe moving ceremony unless, you have the what remains question being asked? That's going to create a bit of create a bit of tension because they're not going to be able to handle that being questioned. Okay, guys, looks like it's coming to an end. Unhappy hour. It cheered me up a bit. I'm glad to have done it because there's a lot of challenges that it's hard to know how to navigate them. And it's certainly possible I've made some quite serious mistakes. And I got to be accountable for what I've done. But I'm just trying to figure out what the reality is. I got to face, as Bertrand Russell says, I'll end on that. As Bertrand Russell says, we must face the world as it really is, not what we'd like it to be. So have a great evening, everyone. And I'll see you Wednesday for at least another happy hour or unhappy hour. I'm hoping to do a video of some kind as well. So thanks a lot. We'll see you on Wednesday.